There we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of, I guess we're calling this Campus2Canton Live. I don't know if Felix has ever really determined that, and he, is very particular about certain things. But that's Chris Moxley. I'm Matt Bruening. We're going to talk more about the Big Ten spring list reports, priority, something that he also wanted to name the show that also doesn't somewhat make sense because we're already in the spring and all that other good stuff. But we're going to talk Rutgers, Minnesota, Nebraska. This is a great start to the show, Chris. And
it's all written down on the show sheet.
I know. I was trying to find the tabs. They're all open everywhere. It's been a crazy week. And Oregon, which is gonna be the fun one. We're gonna talk the Ducks, but we have to talk obviously Shedeur and Travis Hunter, and we're gonna do that, as Felix always says, after the stinger. Campus2Canton Live, Chris Moxley, Matt Bruening. Subscribe to the channel if you do love college football and you like this kind of content. We're trying to show the world that college football is the best sport in all of the land. Chris, I imagine you have now seen the statement and or video that have gone somewhat viral about one coach, Deion Sanders, who we all love here. Felix has talked about multiple times how great he raised the economic standards of Boulder, Colorado. And it's what was it, like $1 million?
Yeah, the average home price is like $1 million before he even got there. Yeah.
And he helped raise that. Talked about how Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but if I'm remembering correctly, it's something close to the fact of Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter will be like Eli Manning and pick where they're going to go. And there's some NFL teams that they will not be going to. I will let you go first on this, and I will give my thoughts on a very interesting quote on two very interesting players as well, both of which have the ability to come out after this year's season into next year's draft class, but I believe both have at least one more year of eligibility after that if they so choose to come back.
One. Yeah. So I saw this quote, and my first reaction was, I don't think that Shedeur is good enough to be pulling this kind of move. Travis Hunter might be, but I don't know if Travis Hunter is going to be a corner at the next level. I think he might be a receiver. We saw him get bullied pretty hard in some games, especially the one he came back, who's at Stanford, and Alec Amanor had yards on him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's going to go in the first round of the draft. I feel pretty confident saying that. I don't know if that's true for Shedeur. Either way, this is such a weird approach and so off-putting for teams. I'm probably selecting saying, well, I'm going to have to deal with this the whole time that's going on. What happens if he doesn't start year one, Shedeur? Yeah. Then what? And so I don't know. It was weird. I don't have like a super strong take on it. It's just Deion being Deion, in my opinion. Like, this is just par for the course. And what I think is always so funny is, like, he has another son.
Yeah.
That's never mentioned. Shiloh. Schiano. You know the meme where the child is jumping to the mother's arms, the one child is drowning, and then on the very bottom, there's the skeleton in the chair. Skeleton in the chair is Shiloh.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad for him. He had a big play last year too that helped him win a game before he got ejected in that game, I believe.
And Deion publicly ranks his kids on Instagram too. This is not I don't know if Travis Hunter gets in that ranking though. Although he basically is.
He might be now.
Yeah. Although Travis Hunter did just buy his mom a house too. So we might have a custody battle going on in Boulder, Colorado.
That's a beautiful house too. How nice it must be to be one of the best players in college football right now. Being able to buy your parents a house. Usually, you see that as like a rookie in the NFL. I'm very torn on this take. I posted on Twitter that I'm all for players flexing whatever power they have to do whatever it is they need to do. Obviously, you have all the people talking about freedom of movement and all this other stuff, and that the players shouldn't have to be in a draft. They should get to pick where they need to go. And I don't necessarily disagree with that take. I think it would be interesting. You do, in a way, get that with college football, despite the recruiting process and how much players can or cannot be paid. A lot of times we do see players pick where they want to go. Sometimes, yes, NIL factors into that before and after it was legal. And some of it's the coaching staff. Some of it's, they always wanted to play for said university and they go there because they're a legacy. Whatever the reasoning, most of the time these players are picking where they want to go. I don't know that either has or will have the star power to pull this off, though. Eli Manning did it. He was
the number one recruit in his or number one player in the country. He was going first overall and said, "I'm not playing in Los Angeles."
That's what I thought. So I couldn't remember. I'm going to be honest. I wasn't really watching the NFL draft when Eli Manning got drafted. But if I was remembering correctly, I thought that's what it was. If either one of them has a chance to go with number one overall, it's going to be Travis Hunter. I mean, I know that Shedeur has his fans out there, and I think Shedeur is a really good college quarterback, and I do think he will make it into the NFL and be an NFL quarterback. I don't know that it's as a starter, and I'm sorry, I don't think it's a first-round pick. So I don't know what second-round pick has been able to flex their muscle and say, oh, hey, if you draft me, I'm not going there, and an NFL team just being, oh, okay, cool, we're good. We'll just, you do whatever you want to do. I get that it's Deion's kid. I just don't understand that. And if I'm going to be honest, as great as I think Travis Hunter could be, like, I don't think it's unfair to say there's a lot of us at Campus2Canton who believe if Travis Hunter committed fully to wide receiver, you could argue he's the number one wide receiver in this class. Even that being said, I don't know that he has the cachet to pull that move either. So I'm just kind of confused by all of this. I don't know why you need to come out and say it, and I get it. You're right. It probably is just Deion being Deion. I just think that puts more of a target on these kids' back for what? Like, I feel like
there's already a target.
There is, but now it's gotten immensely bigger for what I believe is no reason, because I hate to break it. I don't think Colorado's going to be any better this year. So now you're just putting unneeded pressure on both of these kids for, in my opinion, no reason. Now, maybe they welcome it, and I'm all for that, but it just didn't make any sense to make that kind of statement at this time, to me.
I like the conspiracy that's going around, though. And it's the idea is Deion comes out and says this. So when maybe respective players fall in the draft, he could say, we were just choosing where we wanted to go. We're so
pretty good, actually.
I think it was Bud Elliott who said this. We're so selfless that we're letting them get higher up picks so we can go in the third round and build a better team around us.
That's actually a pretty solid strategy. It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
The Deion Sanders is nothing if not a politician in some sense of the word. That 2004 draft, by the way, that Eli Manning went first overall, was stacked in the top 10. Eli, Larry Fitzgerald, Phillip Rivers, Sean Taylor, Kellen Winslow, Roy Williams, D'Angelo Hall. And then the Raiders picked Robert Gallery at 2. Who did who?
I said, who's the worst pick out of that group you just named? Kellen Winslow?
Robert Gallery went second. I don't even know who that is. But yeah, I mean, probably Kellen Winslow, right?
I mean, I'm a Browns fan, and, Kellen Winslow, for his off-field stuff, I guess, was a pretty decent player. He taking off the off-field issues, I guess, on-field, he was all right. Yeah, we'll see. I don't. Do you think Shedeur? I mean, I don't want to go completely off topic here because we're talking Big Ten today, but I mean, could he be this year's, I guess you could say JJ McCarthy? I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the world outside of Chris K and maybe JJ McCarthy's mom and, I guess, we love JJ's dad for certain weird things that he's done on video. I guess outside of those three, I don't think any of us here. Well, no, maybe we could put Corey Pereira in that category. None of us thought he was a first-round pick. Sounds like it might be.
I certainly didn't think. I don't think Shedeur has the same physical tools if we're comparing prospects. No, I mean, they're not really similar players. But next year's quarterback class is bad.
Yeah,
it's like I don't think who's the quarterback one currently. Is it still Drew Aller?
I mean, I would assume it's probably one of
Cade Klubnik, Connor Wegman.
Ewers, LR, Wigman, 4 or Beck. I mean, there's all the talk about
Beck.
Carson
Beck.
So,
but it's not a good quarterback class. So would it be crazy if Shedeur was the top quarterback on some people's boards? No, I don't think so. I don't know that I will have him there, but he doesn't really possess the physical gifts that I think you want out of a player like him. I also just don't know how good he is. Sean Lewis really helped have that offense humming. Pat Shurmur comes in and it kind of gets neutered a little bit. I don't know what the results are going to be. So You're not just drafting quarterback for results, but you do need to see him succeed. And we haven't seen enough of that yet to tell me he's going in the first round or is good enough to determine his landing spot like that.
Well, I mean, if you ask Shador, he would tell you that Sean Lewis was not good for that offense. He was calling too many complicated routes for the wide receivers and was not allowing them.
He was throwing for like 500 yards a game under Sean Lewis, and he's got Sean Lewis got done so dirty by that Colorado staff.
He really, really did. Yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting. I saw a lot of people kind of when this first come out and say practically the same thing we're saying, some a little bit meaner and saying like they didn't even think Shador was like a top day two pick, like he was a 4th or 5th round pick, and them getting kind of dunked on by the I think one of them was Shane Hallam, I want to say, with Draft Countdown, said I think he has a 4th round grade right now in Shador. I could be misspeaking, but there's people who are just not don't believe that's going to happen. We'll see. I don't think I'd be very surprised if both of those players go in the first round next year. All right, let's talk the Big Ten pre-spring priorities part 2. Pretty sure we're on part 2. I'm pretty sure me and Felix started this part 1 last week, but I can't remember. Rutgers. I'm going to let you take this one, Chris. You are a Rutgers fan.
I grew up in New Jersey. I am a Rutgers fan.
For those people who do not know, Chris is a Rutgers fan. No changes on the offense or head coaching side of the thing. So they are running it back with Greg Schiano and Kirk Soraka. The key departures, right guard Curtis Dunlap, who you have on here, was not great. So I'm going to take it that you are not too sad that he is gone. No. Key additions, they add Minnesota's quarterback, Athlon. God, I always butcher his last name. Calic Manis, thank you. And freshman running back Gabriel Winovich and A.J. Saras.
I don't know. I've actually never watched him. I thought it was like Saras.
Neither have I. So
yeah, he was not included in our 43 quarterback write-ups. So that kind of tells you how we feel about him and our freshman guy.
That should tell you a massive thing because we're also not a massive fan of this quarterback class. So if he did not make it in the 43 quarterback write-ups, we are clearly not quite big fans of him at the moment. The key holes that we're looking at here is wide receiver production and the possible quarterback competition. Chris, what do you think here about the weapons in the passing game, and are there any worth it, like production wise, that you're looking at, especially fantasy wise for us in C2C?
No, simply put, like I just don't see it, and especially with Ethan Calic-Manis, who for how long did we hear Minnesota beat writers hype up Calic-Manis? And every time we saw him prior to actually starting in like spring games, he wasn't good. So I don't know where that came from. Then he played and also wasn't good. I don't really understand the Calic-Manis thing. And I think he's probably going to start because who else do they have? Evan Simon, I guess, but I don't think they want to roll back with Evan Simon. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the wide receiver room. I'm not a big fan of the quarterback situation. I think the only thing you can point to for production is the rushing game.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they lean on Gavin Wimsatt again. He was not good last year. He was a guy that I had hoped might be able to do something, but I mean, what is it? I was trying to pull it up, like less than a 50% completion percentage last year passing the ball. He was just not good.
47.8% completion percentage. Calic-Manis had 53.1%. And sorry, Evan Simon transferred out of the program.
Gotcha.
But both guys were under 6.3 yards per attempt. Like, you're not pushing the ball downfield. They have it ready for this one. A combined 23 and 17 touchdown interception ratio. So yeah, this is not a prolific passing offense, really in any capacity. And I don't really like any of the wide receivers here. So yeah, don't like this Rutgers passing game.
So is the only player we can count on here running back Kyle. I know you know his
Monangai.
There we go. That's not how I was going to say it. Who had 1,200 plus yards and 8 touchdowns. Is he the only player that you think is worth rostering for C2C leagues?
Probably. I don't know that he's going to be able to repeat that production, though. I mean, he was pretty efficient. 5.2 yards per carry in the Big Ten is pretty good. Rutgers is actually 6th in returning production. I'm not super worried. Like we talked about, they lost their guard earlier, but they returned 4 or 5 offensive linemen, and the guard they lost was like Dunlap was probably the weaker of the starters. I don't know. I like Monangai. I don't know that his ceiling is no more than 1,208. Right,
Okay.
like that was his ceiling year. So are we going to get 905? I think that's possible. They still have Samuel Brown, who I like, didn't get as much run last year. I have not watched a ton of Gabe Winovich, who I believe his brother played for Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have not watched a ton of him. I don't have a lot of opinions on him, but he's really athletic. He's big. I mean, is he somebody that you can see making a year one impact, even if he slots in as the RB2?
I mean, maybe they do run it a ton. I mean, I was trying to pull up. So the past couple years with Kirk Soraka and Greg Schiano, they've rushed it in neutral situations 68% of the time. I mean, they're
this is a ground and pound offense.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe he gets in there a little bit. Maybe he's a guy that you grab for future production, but I mean, you're talking about, unless Sam Brown transfers out, who I know you put on here as possibly like an post-spring transfer candidate, you're looking at Kyle's ahead of him, Brown's ahead of him, and with what they were able to do last year, I don't know that, Winovich just comes in and is able to take one of those spots. So he's probably third guy on the depth chart. I don't know that I want I don't know I want the first guy on Rutgers depth chart, much less the second or third. So
yeah, he's interesting because we have him higher than services do. I think he's at RB23. So we like the player, but I don't know what the upside, and I don't know that he's NFL upside either. So you're probably not drafting him.
Yeah, I personally would probably at this point steer clear of him. I'm trying to pull up what his comparisons are on in our database. Because I honestly did not. I don't even know who wrote him up for the guy. Because the other fear you have to have here is we just talked about AJ, the quarterback, in there with the 43 write-ups. We also did not love this running back class either. We thought it was kind of bad. So even though he is up here as like a top 23 player in our guide, does not mean we don't even have him in our database. So I don't know what that says about him. So Kyle Manungai is really the only player we are currently looking at here for Rutgers. Is Samuel Brown the only player you think transfers out post-spring? Does it matter?
I could see Wimsatt going, but where's Wimsatt going to go? FCS?
Probably. I mean, I don't see. There we go. I was spelling Winovich wrong. That's why it was not.
His top comp was Le'Veon Bell in the guide.
I mean, that's pretty interesting, I guess. I mean, it was a really great NFL player. I don't know that he was that great at Michigan State, but that's a pretty interesting list, actually. So maybe you do spend a last pick on him. You got Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, Melvin Gordon.
You just skipped Brian Leonard, his Rutgers counterpart, Brian Leonard.
God, yeah, I didn't even see that. I was
built similarly.
Deshaun Foster. That's actually a pretty good. I mean, he's
really athletic.
Yeah,
for his size, absolutely. So he's he's like the only freshman that I would consider, probably the only other player I consider rostering outside Manungai on this team.
Yeah. The only other player I don't even know if I would draft him, but maybe throw him on a watch list is he was a freshman last year, their quarterback, Johnny Shepard, who
we did. Like him.
Yeah, there was a few of us that were fairly fond of him in last year's guide. I can't remember where he was committed to before Rutgers, but ended up switching his commitment coming to Rutgers. Like, I thought maybe there was a shot that if nobody else came in, he could beat out Gavin Wimsatt. He's a little bit of a better passer than what Wimsatt, I shouldn't say little, a lot better. It's not hard to Gavin Wimsatt set a low bar here, folks. It's not hard to jump that. But also a very good athlete in his own right as a rushing threat. Very interesting player. Obviously, again, with Athlon coming over, I think he probably is a starter. But if he goes out there and struggles mightily, maybe we see Shepard get a shot here. So, again, I don't know that you're really relying on Rutgers to bring you any kind of CFF assets there at the quarterback position. But, I mean, his listed comps, just athletically, again, here for quarterbacks, DJ Lagway, Dak Prescott, Taysom Hill, Tavares Jackson. I mean, those are some pretty interesting quarterbacks, especially when you look at rushing-wise.
He's big and athletic. He's like 6'2", 230.
So he's a very interesting player. He'd be the only other player. Again, you're talking like last round of your C2C leagues, if he's available, maybe you take a shot on him because, again,
he's
with
rostered in all
rushing
mine because I drafted
there
him
you
in so
go.
many spots.
I know I have him on a few rosters. I don't know, all of my leagues if he's drafted in all of them. But if he's available, again, he's not someone I'm like, you need to go out, maybe just watch list him and see if he gets a shot out there. But that's really it. We're unfortunately, you're not looking for much here for Rutgers depth chart.
No.
A team that we are at least have a few players that we're interested in, and that is Nebraska. No changes, again, at the offense or head coaching positions with Matt Rhule and your favorite offensive coordinator of all time, Marcus Satterfield, returning. Their big key departures, Anthony Grant goes into the NFL draft. Safety Omar Brown does as well. And quarterbacks Jeff Sims and Chuba Purdy both transfer out. Key transfers in: wide receiver Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, wide receiver Isaiah Nayor from Texas, running back Dante Dowdell from Oregon, and Micah Mazzucco from Florida.
I think it's pronounced Mazcow.
Mazcow, even better. Obviously, highly sought after and touted quarterback Dylan Raiola, legacy to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, ended up joining them this year. Willis McGahee, the fourth running back, and then tight end Carter Nelson. The holes: running back Gabe Irvin, dislocated shoulder last year. Raheem Ramir. Golly, this is so bad. This is why I need Felix here, because he actually knows how to say players' names. Johnson dislocated his hip in week 3, and Emmett Johnson. How do you see this backfield kind of shaking out here for Nebraska?
It's interesting because we really liked Gabe Urban, and I don't really know what to expect of him. He's been hurt in back-to-back years now. And I don't know if the previous injury was a shoulder. I think it was an ACL tear. But once your shoulder gets messed up, it's concerning. Ramir Johnson, again, a big player that they want to use. They both got hurt in the same game. I think against Northern Illinois last year. So I don't really know how this running back situation steps up. I like Dante Dowdell a little bit. Is he the guy? They brought him in, obviously, because they like him. I expect the committee more than anything.
Yeah, I would imagine that it goes that way as well. I was really high on Gabe Irvin last year. Just if you look at what this offense has done throughout Matt Rhule's time and Satterfield's time in college football, they are at least tend to lean run heavy. Over the past couple years, 60%, 50%, and then last year, 70% rushing in neutral or early downs. Again, a lot of that, I think, last year came down to they just did not have a quarterback.
You didn't like Heinrich Harburg?
I did not. I did actually think Jeff Sims was an interesting late round pick last year.
People in Jeff Sims love.
It was more of, again, what we had seen Matt Rhule do with those type of quarterbacks and Satterfield as well. And so I was like, oh, Sims, he's like an interesting late round pick. That blew up in my face. But I did also think Gabe Irvin would be successful there. Maybe the injury held him back. I mean, they have not had a good success rate rushing the ball anyways. Last year, it was less than 45%, which is kind of like the average line. The only times that they've actually been over that was when he was back in Temple at 2016 and then Baylor for 2 years. But none of which that has really been incredible. So I don't know that I would really go after Gabe Irvin anymore at this point. He's been given multiple years and has not been able to do it. Dante Dowdell's not even a guy that I really think I would lean on. He's more of like that 2-down banger, like maybe in the red zone, he could be an interesting running back, getting you some touchdowns, but he's not a guy who's going to like burn anybody to the end zone. I'm pretty sure I wrote up his freshman profile a couple years ago or last year when he came out. He's just not a guy that's like super athletic. He's very much that 1 to 2 down grinder. I don't remember him even being that good as a receiving back either. So I don't know that he's going to bring you a lot of fantasy upside. Where I do think there could be some interesting fantasy upside with this offense, and obviously the improvement at the quarterback position, is wide receiver. We've got on here Isaiah Garcia Castaneda.
I'm giving you all the names tonight.
I know, I appreciate it.
No, I mean, I'm giving you all the tough names.
Malachi Coleman, who was a very intriguing but raw wide receiver coming in last year, and then Jalen Lloyd, as well as obviously we mentioned Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks transferring in. Would you, I guess kind of like the same thing we were just talking about with Rutgers. Is there a guy here that you think maybe is interesting from a fantasy perspective, C2C upside? Like, I know there's one for me, but what are your thoughts on this wide receiver room?
I have no idea how it's going to shake out, to be honest. Nayor didn't play at Texas last year because of a preseason injury or spring practice injury, I believe. Then we saw, no, it was a late injury was what it was, because we were at the expo, I think, when it happened.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Anyway,
No.
Jamal Banks, I like as a player. Don't know what he's going to do. Again, we like the upside of Malachi Coleman. Not sure what to think. When I was looking up Nebraska, I had no idea Jalen Lloyd did what he did last year. He was an athlete in the 2023 class. He ran a 10.43 100-meter. He's a 6-time champ in track and field. Last season, 7 receptions, 237 yards, 3 touchdowns, 39.5 yards per reception. Now he's tiny. He's like 5'10", 160-ish. But man, that dude has wheels as a deep threat. I'm just keeping an eye on him, I guess. Like flagging him, seeing what he does, figure out what his role is in an offense. He might just be like your gadget speed guy. But I was going back and I was kind of impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about that kind of speed and what you can do on the field, that is he's an interesting name. I do think that Dylan Raiola is going to be able to raise the bar of this offense. You know, we saw them at times.
The bar of this offense was like the basement.
That is true.
It can't get any worse.
That their passing, like advanced stats, were actually not that bad last year with Jeff Sims and Chuba Purdy at quarterback, which is again what gives me some hope that it could. Okay, I was wrong. They were, well, obviously we knew they weren't passing a lot. We just talked about how they were running it 70% of the time in early neutral situations, but their success rate passing the ball was at 30%. Like that's pretty bad, folks.
They probably had a couple explosives with my boy Jalen Lloyd.
I'm about to pull that up. That's the next thing I was going to look at and see like how at least explosive this offense. Maybe that's what it was. Okay, so it was almost 2.0, which is well past the average line, which is 1.6. So, I mean, even though they were only passing in 30% neutral or early down situations, they were still 2.0 when it came to the explosiveness, which is very, very good. It's actually the most explosive offense Matt Rhule has ever had. So maybe some of that comes down to Lloyd. So imagine him actually having a quarterback who can throw the ball. Like, that's where I think this could change the offense. To me, it's probably Lloyd and Coleman. I felt like Coleman showed a little bit more last year. Like he looked good in the freshman bowl games. I can't remember which one it was that he was in. I want to say it was the one that was in Hawaii, if I'm remembering correctly, because I do remember.
No.
I think it may be I don't remember. I remember Nico was throwing him the ball at one point, and he actually looked really good in that game. I thought. Look, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not go watch all of Nebraska's games last year, so I apologize for that. But in the limited amount that I did watch, I felt like he was showing a little bit more as a route runner, running some more like crisper routes and everything. Didn't look as raw coming in as I thought he was going to. He, in my opinion, is by far the best athlete outside of probably Lloyd on that offense as a wide receiver. And having a quarterback like Dylan Raiola to get him the ball, I do think that he is going to be a good player for them. Just how much, though, do they get him the ball is going to be interesting. How much can this offensive line hold up, I think, is also going to be a big thing, because Dylan Raiola is not like the fleetest of foot. He's a pretty good, I would argue, the best pocket manipulator in this class with his ability to step up and avoid the rush, and, again, has all the arm talent in the world. But if you're not getting any time to pass the ball, I don't know how good that's going to be. Did Nick have the offensive line rated on there for them?
No, but it was fine last year.
Okay.
And they lost 2 rotational pieces, but I think it's Masqua started like 11 or 12 games for Florida. He was okay. But he's a guard, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits there. But the offensive line is fine. Do we think Nebraska wins more than 6 games? Right now, their FanDuel win total 7.5. I mean, it's juiced to the under, but yeah, I mean, if you're sitting here right now, I think so.
Yeah, so that's what I brought up their schedule here, so we can just do this live. Dynasty Coach A asks in the chat, do we think Nebraska wins more than 6 games? UTEP, I think that's a win. So they got one. I actually think they probably actually beat Colorado this year with a decent quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Do you agree with that, or it's
call the toss up?
Okay, we'll call it. They're beating Northern Iowa. Well,
They
we're Illinois. I would give them
Illinois
the lead,
lost a lot in the last 2 years, so probably
Purdue. I think so.
Yeah.
Rutgers. See, the question is, Rutgers had such a good defense.
I know Rutgers is fun, man.
That's kind of the one, yeah.
Let's put it in the toss-up category with Colorado.
All right, so that's gonna be it because then they get UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Ohio State. They're not winning any of those games. Oh, and Indiana.
They could be UCLA.
They could
be Indiana too.
Indiana. So
they have 4 wins and then 4 games that I would consider somewhat toss-ups. So yeah, I mean, I said their total 6.5. So that's where I think they win.
I'd take the over.
6 or more.
I'm taking the over. I think Nebraska's going bowling this year.
I think they are too.
So take the over.
Rhule's a great coach too. Like
he
get those guys playing hard. Like I could see them beating UCLA, and I could see that. I mean, I don't know they'll beat Iowa, but they could beat Iowa.
I mean, yeah, it comes down to really the defense and how many points that defense scores for Iowa, because we know their offense is only going to score like maybe a touchdown.
They hired Tim Lester as offensive coordinator, right?
Yeah,
I wasn't really a big fan of what he was doing at not Western Michigan. Yeah, Western Michigan. He was in the NFL last year. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Dynasty coach says that he could see 7. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's set at 6.5, I take the over. I think they're going bowling this year. I've said before, and I'll say again, I think he's got 3 years. I think at some point, Dylan Raiola is actually going to take Nebraska to the playoffs. I believe in his talent that much, and I believe in Matt Rhule. Like, say what you want about him in the NFL and the Carolina Panthers that flamed out horribly, but in college football, he has rebuilt programs and been tremendous at both Temple and Baylor. I think he's going to be able to do that here at Nebraska. I really do. Like, I think he's going to be just fine.
Nebraska is an interesting situation because their legacy is so significant, and I think they have enough money NIL-wise to do some things. I don't know that it's substantial, but they also just hired the athletic director from Washington, I believe, to replace theirs who had gone to Texas A&M.
Yeah,
I think they're pretty serious about competing again. So it would not surprise me if in year 3 they get it cooking with maybe a couple portal additions. They need to just add talent.
Yeah.
But they've been doing that in the last couple classes. So I can see it.
It's going to happen, folks. Mark it down. Anybody you think really heads out? I mean, I don't see any like big names we're talking about post-spring transfer candidates. I mean, maybe Gabe Ervin.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe one of the running backs head out. I mean, it's a pretty crowded room. Yeah. So I could see that. Yeah, that was really it. I think the tight end position here is kind of interesting. They bring back Thomas Fidone.
Yeah.
And, Fidone had back-to-back ACL tears to start his collegiate career.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
And he looked okay last year too. I love the kid they brought in though, Carter Nelson. Raw, physically underdeveloped. His only weighs like 220, but can probably get up to like 250. Little nugget from our freshman guy. He's from Ainsworth, Nebraska, which has a population of 1,600 people.
Nice. There you go. Who wrote that up? Matt? Big wide receiver guy?
David. Gotcha. I like that. He said talent can be found anywhere, and that's true. Ainsworth, Nebraska, home of Carter Nelson, who was also heavily recruited by Georgia, by the way. He was a legit prospect.
Yeah. Should be interesting for Nebraska. So bowling. Nebraska's going bowling. That should make Cornhusker fans happy. I think I said that. I thought they were going to go bowling last year with Jeff Sims, though, as well. So, take that with a grain of salt.
What did they finish last year? 5-7?
They're
a better team. They're a better team this year than their 5-7 team. So yeah,
100%. Yeah,
6-6. I think is certain. I made it 6.5. So if the line is for bowling, I I would, and we're assuming even money, right?
Yeah.
I would say that they're bowling.
I agree as well. Minnesota. No changes at the offense or head coaching position. PJ Fleck and Matt Simon with Greg Harbaugh Jr. Key departures, center Nathan Bowe. We already talked about the Greek Freak Athen. And running back Zach Evans. Transfers in Max Brosmer from New Hampshire, Saban Gura from Ohio, and Marcus Major from Oklahoma. Freshman quarterback Drake Lindsay comes in. The big holes here at wide receiver: return Daniel Jackson, Chris Ottman-Bell, but lose Corey Crooms. Oh, I'm sorry. They return Daniel Jackson, but lose Corey Crooms, Chris Ottman-Bell, and Brevin Spann-Ford. What are we looking at with this PJ Fleck wide receiver room, who, again, up until what was that, 2 years ago, had more first-round wide receivers drafted than Brian Hartline and Ryan Day, as Felix Sharp just loved to tout on this program. That is no longer true, but it was up until a year and a half.
That is no longer true. Honestly, I don't know, and that's one of my big questions for this team. Daniel Jackson had 831 yards and 8 touchdowns. I think he comes back as the one. Brosmer is certainly an upgrade over Cali McManus. I don't want to. He led FCS, I think, in regular season passing yards at New Hampshire. New Hampshire was a really, really good program too. They had Dylan Lobb, who's headed off to the NFL now. But Brosmer is a lot more of he's more of a game manager, to be totally honest. He's a good arm, but he's more of a game manager. And I think that's fine for what Minnesota needs too. Good player, one of the better transfer quarterbacks, but nothing to really sing the highest of praises on. He was my 4th ranked FCS quarterback coming in for transfer. So I like him. But yeah, I think Daniel Jackson could see a bump this year too. He had over 100 targets. And I mean, where is the target competition coming from?
Yeah.
Like Elijah Spencer got hurt last year. I think Elijah Spencer comes back and he does a little bit of damage. But I just don't know, to be honest, where this production's coming from outside of Daniel Jackson. And I think you have to throw it at some point, and you will be able to throw it better than you did last year. So
yeah, I mean,
they also had Christian Driver, who is he the son of Donald Driver, or am I just making that up?
Ooh, you're gonna catch me lying if I answer that. I honestly have I have no idea.
I'm almost positive he is, because he transferred in from Penn State, and I'm pretty confident. He was a 2A player in high school.
I mean, if you say it say it with enough authority and say it with your chest, anything's true nowadays. So, we'll just we'll go with that. I was trying to look it up real quick. He is the son of former Green Bay Packers wide receiver Donald Driver. Pledged to Minnesota, 1,000% committed is the bio line there. Yeah, I mean, I think Daniel Jackson is the guy. I actually would not mind rostering him. He's a guy we've hoped would kind of break out over the past couple years, again, with what PJ Fleck has shown in developing wide receivers. You mentioned what Brosmer did last year with New Hampshire. I mean, again, what was it, 29-6 touchdown to interception ratio, 64% completion percentage. I mean, that is, again, nothing against the Greek Freak here, but it's a massive step up in production compared to what we saw. Again, obviously, with New Hampshire and not here in the Big Ten, we've seen some players struggle with the step up. That's probably possible again here, but I still believe that the offense will run a little bit better, because I still believe in PJ Fleck. He's still one of my favorite coaches in college football. I think he is a good coach. A lot of stuff came out about him and the row the boat stuff that was a year or two ago. But
is there a higher ceiling for Minnesota, the program, than where PJ Fleck has it right now? I mean, they had a couple 10-win seasons. Clearly, who else are you going to bring in that's better than PJ Fleck? I don't think there's somebody out there for Minnesota right now.
I mean, that's the problem with most college programs, though, is everybody wants somebody else to come in. I mean, look, I don't want to make it all about Ohio State, but Ohio State fans want Ryan Day fired and to bring in somebody better. Who are you bringing in that's better, though? There
are people out there better than Ryan Day.
Oh, man, that's debatable.
Kalen DeBoer is better coach than Ryan Day.
How dare you, sir? We don't know that. Kalen DeBoer, we'll see what he does to Alabama. But I'm with you. Like, PJ Fleck, I think, is a great head coach for what Minnesota is, and the production, everything that he's produced at Minnesota. He's been a very God, what's the word I'm looking for? Effective was not the word. Consistent and successful. I don't know why effective was sitting there in my head. Successful head coach for the most part for what you'd expect from Minnesota. Saban Gura. We've kind of liked having the Minnesota running backs on our fantasy teams, but we've seen these guys who come up from the G5 into the Power 5. I can continually reference something Colin Decker said. It was over the winter break when he was doing all those shows by himself. He was solo hosting because Austin was, I believe, stuck in the Maldives. Yacht ran out of fuel or something like that. And he talked about how we get excited for all these G5 running backs who come into the Power 5 or Power 4 now or whatever, yet none of them actually really succeed. Ben Gura was amazing for Ohio. Do we see him being able to replicate that success here for Minnesota?
Not if you believe Darius Taylor is as good as Campus2Canton and CFF folks think, because he's being drafted really high and he looked awesome last year. I think he was brought in to play sort of the Sean Tyler role from last year. Like a change of pace guy who, you get in and hopefully he can connect a couple of explosive plays because he kind of does have that explosiveness, but that's what I kind of see it happening. I think he's going to be second in the pecking order. They bring in Marcus Major too, who's a bigger back. Right? I think he's So yeah, that's what I thought. And so that's kind of how I see it. I think Taylor is going to have another big season. I do. Over 1,000 yards, probably double-digit touchdowns. But you can't. Well, I was gonna say you can't, but PJ Fleck would run somebody for like 350 times if he could. I don't think he will because Taylor got hurt last year, and I think they'll maybe be a little bit more conservative with him. I mean, Bangor is going to get probably like 80 attempts. I mean, that's crazy.
No, I mean, that sounds fair to me. I kind of agree with that. I mean, who was the second
Jordan
for
Newman?
them?
Jordan Newman's still there. For what it's worth.
So, I mean, he had 127. Darius Taylor led the backfield with 138 last year. So, that's kind of. So you think Ben Gura takes over for Jordan as the number 2?
I don't know. I like Ben Gura. I don't really have a strong opinion. But it's going to be a rotation behind Taylor is basically what I feel confident in. Zach Evans is gone. So you're going to see Ben Gura, Major, Newman. Even Bryce Williams is back, and he had 30-plus attempts last year. So, yeah, a lot of rotation behind Taylor. But I think Taylor's still going to be pretty confidently the guy.
Well, I mean, you are part of the CFF team. Where do they have some of these players? They don't officially, I guess, depending on when you end up listening to this show. This Friday, which is the 30th, I believe, is when the CFF rankings will be fully updated and launched on the site. I believe is what Jared Palmgren said, who is our CFF lead. Where do they kind of fall down on these running backs?
I'll tell you right now that Darius Taylor is a first-round pick in CFF drafts.
Okay. Which
I am personally not selecting him there, but I understand the reasoning, especially based on PJ Fleck's history. So I don't blame people for doing it. It's just not what I would do.
Okay.
But running back is pretty loaded this year. So
okay. So Dwight in the chat, I mean, he just asked about Saban Gura and Darius Taylor. I feel like you kind of answered that, but how much work can Ben Gura take away from Darius Taylor? He also mentioned that he liked Drake Lindsey, who is the quarterback, big quarterback coming in for them. True freshman, was he listed at 6?
He's a big boy, right?
Yeah, we did not write him up for the guide. 6'5", 235. Did we?
Yeah, we did. We like him.
Okay.
At least he has fans in our at CTC. There are people who think he's pretty good. I think Mike Valerie's a big fan of his. I think Alfred is as well.
I mean, Mike Valerie. That's calm down a little bit.
Mike's Misfit Toys. I don't think he's one of Mike's Misfit Toys though. Yeah. Some people really like what he can do, and I'm pretty sure he's a pretty high max velocity too. So he's got a big So ADP wise, Darius Taylor is currently being drafted as the 5th overall player off the board, 3rd overall running back. Bangura is going 231st overall, 83rd running back. And that's how Daniel Jackson's being drafted as at the 291st spot. You know what? I like that value for Daniel Jackson.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I do. We talked a little bit about him earlier. I do think he ends up being the number one for this passing offense, which again, I think can take a step forward. So any of these guys you see as like these post-spring, transfers out. What are your thoughts on Drake Lindsay? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch him. I don't remember being a big fan of him. So really the quarterback position, I guess, is kind of wide open outside of Prosper, maybe. I don't.
I mean, I think he probably slots in as the second quarterback, right?
I mean, he has to. There's nobody else really on the roster.
We like him more than I think recruiting services do. But he's 6'5", 235.
Yeah.
Big. He's athletic, but he didn't really play strong high school ball. He played in Arkansas, which, not the strongest of competition. But this staff loves their big quarterbacks. They just do. And honestly, Minnesota was the only P4 team that offered him.
Yeah.
It offered from Colorado State, Missouri State, South Alabama, and Tulsa. Not really he's going to be an interesting player for sure. We are a little bit higher than consensus.
All right, so there you go. Maybe a last round pick on the future quarterback for Minnesota, one Drake Lindsay. Now let's talk about the team we actually want to talk about. No offense to any of the other teams. Nebraska was an interesting conversation, I guess. That's Oregon. Possibly the best team in the Big Ten. Do you agree with that? Yes or no?
No, Ohio State's better.
Stop.
I know you set me up for that one, but I had to at least answer honestly.
No, I actually think they're like right there with Ohio State. And a lot of that I think is because of Dan Lanning. I think dude's just an absolute genius. He actually is the only coach I would take over Ryan Day. So Dan Lanning, if you're looking, if Alabama wasn't good enough for you, come on down. I think you look great in scarlet and gray. We'll save the love fest for another time. But
he turned down the Alabama job, right?
He did, but I would too if you knew Ohio State was coming next when Ryan Day gets fired this year.
Okay. But I mean, is Ohio State a better job than Alabama?
I think so, with the NIL and now that Saban's gone. Do you want to be the guy who follows Saban? Or do you want to be the guy who follows Ryan Day, who will lose to Michigan 4 years in a row and then come in there and win a national championship for Ohio State? Oh, man.
They're not yet. Their NIL program is cooking right now with the work they did in this cycle. So, yeah, Alabama's is certainly not. So, yeah, you're right.
All kidding aside, we talked to Ohio State last week. Let's stop talking about Ohio State. No changes at Ohio State. Man, there we go. Now you can tell it's on my mind. No changes at offensive coordinator or head coach. Dan Lanning back. Will Stein back after a really good year. Key departures: Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, Bucky Irving, and center Jackson Powers Johnson all head to the NFL. Transfers out. Pour one out for Colin Decker. Ty Thompson in the portal. Dante Dowdell enters as well from the running back position. Key transfers in. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma comes in presumptively to be the starter. Quarterback Dante Moore, highly touted freshman quarterback last year. Dante Moore from UCLA comes in to possibly be the backup. We'll have a discussion on that. The number one wide receiver in all of college football, Evan Stewart, transfers in from Texas A&M, and right guard Matthew Bedford from Syracuse comes in. Wide receivers Jeremiah McClellan, who was a highly touted four-star wide receiver, decommits from Ohio State to come over to Oregon. Wide receiver Ryan Pelham and Dylan Gresham all join in as freshmen. I mean, there's not much you can pick apart on this team in general, but obviously we're a fantasy show, so like offensively, I mean, is it wide receiver 4 on the team is the whole here? Like, I mean, they are set up to cook this year.
Evan, the biggest question is probably going to be Evan Stewart's health and adjustment to this offense, right? Like, if you want to, and who fills in for Bucky Irving? I mean, but those are two pretty good questions to have considering what everything else is going on. I don't know. Is Dylan Gabriel much worse than Bo Nix? No.
Yeah, I would agree.
Is Evan Stewart better than Troy Franklin? I think you can make that argument.
Yes.
Running back doesn't really matter to the team, to be totally honest. Powers Johnson's a big loss because he's probably going to go in the first round or early round 2 in the NFL draft. I like the kid they brought in, Bedford. I wrote on the sheet he's from Syracuse. I don't know why I did. He's from Indiana. Very successful guard in the Big Ten. I think he's a really good player. So I'm like, he might shift to center. I don't know if he has experience playing center in the past. He played mostly right guard last year for the Hoosiers, but he's a good player. I just don't know where the holes are on this team. Probably a little bit more defensively, but still, the hole is probably Dylan Gabriel's health is probably what it is. That's probably what's going to hold them back. But bringing in Dante Moore gives you a pretty nice backup option. Dante Moore was originally committed to Oregon, flipped to UCLA late, now ends up back with Oregon, and you have a year where he played a lot and got some experience. It wasn't the best situation, but he did. It's not like you have completely raw backup coming in. So I like this Oregon team a lot.
Yeah. So I'm Ron Burgundy. You got my Ron Burgundy moment there by just reading what's on the sheet. So got me. That's
my bad.
Too, no, you're good. You're good. I'm not gonna pretend like I knew he didn't go to Syracuse. So like I have to take that L as well. I was like, yeah, that sounds right. Syracuse, yeah. The one thing with Dylan Gabriel too, though, with him having obviously the injury history, and that is obviously a massive concern for him. Even if it's not Dante Moore, I do think with Austin Novosad knowing this system could easily step in and probably run this fairly efficiently. And I'm not trying to say Austin Novosad is a better quarterback than Dante Moore, but I would not be surprised if maybe he starts out the season as the quarterback too, having been in the system all last year, giving Dante Moore a little bit more time to come in and learn it. And again, even if he has to go out there because Gabriel gets hurt, I don't think you see a massive step off. Like, yeah, Gabriel has more rushing upside than both of those guys. But it's not like by a massive amount. It's not like we're talking about like a, Jaden Daniels type rushing prospect. Like Dylan Gabriel is good. He's not great. A little bit better than both Dante Moore and Austin Novosad. But I think even if he goes down, like this offense should cook. I mean, we've seen what Will Stein has been able to do with these wide receivers as well. Yeah, I mean,
like just have Novosad or Moore throw bubble screens half the game and you're set.
And I would not be surprised if they get Evan Stewart involved in that. That's what I say. Like, if you look from a fantasy perspective, like he's produced high-end wide receivers everywhere he's been. Like, I think that continues this year. Like, I don't think Evan Stewart will take long to get adjusted to this offense, even if it is them forcing it into his hand in bubble screens. Like, I think that Evan Stewart's got the playmaking ability to make big plays out of that. Like, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think they should use him how they used Troy Franklin last year, which I think is a role he's suited for. I don't know that they're going to do as many manufactured. We're splitting hairs though, right? On how on this team, like how are they going to use Evan Stewart is the question that we're asking about the Ducks. And I mean, you got to feel pretty good if you're an Oregon fan sitting here, and those are our questions. I haven't watched any of the true freshmen coming in. They have 3 receivers who are all ranked highly: Jeremiah McClellan, Ryan Pelham, Dylan Gresham. Yeah, opinions on any of those guys? McClellan's the highest ranked.
I really liked McClellan. I did think it was a little bit of a loss for Ohio State for them to lose him, even with the class that they had coming in. Now, that being said, and I remember talking to big wide receiver guy about this because he also liked McClellan a lot as well. It's probably a better thing for him that he transferred out to Oregon because there's a shot that he doesn't finish as a year 1-0, which I would think is probably almost set in certainty that was going to happen to him at Ohio State. Because I do think, outside of Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson, I think there is a shot for him to kind of come in here, maybe do something. They still have Gary Bryant Jr. They still have, Trayshawn Holden's still there too, isn't he? So, I mean, they have...
Yeah, he is.
I mean, God, Jerry on Dickey. What was it? Who was the other guy that was there last year?
Sadiq, the tight end, who I actually really like.
They had Patrick Herbert still there as well. Justin Herbert's younger brother
as well. Who I think led
there's someone else that I'm trying to remember who I don't remember. He wasn't a 4-star. I think it was a high-end 3-star. Is it Kyler Casper?
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean, they've got players that could come in and play over McClellan. I think he is a phenomenal one. I think he suits for the slot a little bit more than the outside, but I think a very good route runner, really good hands. Should be an interesting part if he gets on the field. I mean, I just named, I don't know that he does now. I don't know that he's going to get on over, Holden, Gary Bryant Jr. we didn't see Jerion Dickey. And I mean, we had Dickey, at least athletically, a much better wide receiver. And I think maybe he gets on the field before then. So, but I do like McClellan. I'll be honest, I didn't watch a lot of the other two wide receivers, so I can't speak, intelligently on Pelham or Dylan Grisham.
Yeah. I mean, they're all ranked pretty highly. Do you know Casper ran 30? What is that? 30? No, I'm doing mental math on the air. That's not very good. 29 more routes than Jerion Dickey's 21. You're in 50.
Jeez.
Like,
I mean, Dickey was hurt a lot, but yeah.
I mean, he didn't even look good in the bowl game either.
No, I know.
Are we done? For 7 yards.
Are we giving? I know Felix isn't. Felix is not giving up on Jerion Dickey. Are we giving up on Jerion Dickey? He's not here. I know he's an athletic freak. From the year 1-0 perspective, we're done with him. But
it's crazy to me that he could only play like 20 snaps last year. I know he was hurt, but still, it's a 5-star athletic freak that you can't get on the field, and he's probably can't get on the field because he isn't technical enough. Like, they don't trust him in the offense, and the team's gonna be just as good this year. So are you gonna trust him if he hasn't taken the developmental steps? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I don't have much faith in Jerion Dickey at this. I don't have any Jerion Dickey anyway. I felt he was going too high last year. But if I had him, I mean, probably can't really move him for anything. So you're probably just holding.
Yeah, no, I think it's 100% because he just wasn't technical enough. I mean, he was just an athletic freak. I mean, I know Felix likes to talk about it all the time. Not only played linebacker, cornerback, safety. I believe they had him at rushing at times from the edge position. Like, he's just an absolute physical specimen. Like, he is an incredible player. But he's just not doing that on the wide receiver side of things, which is where we want to see him.
So here's an interesting question. I know where it's kind of off topic, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
If you are a very high-end athlete already and you're physically developed and you're physically mature, what about going to a school that isn't quite such a battle for targets?
Yeah.
And develop for a year, learn the nuances of the position, and then go to a bigger school once you have those technical details figured out. Because at least you're getting on the field then. Like, Jerion Dickey's been on the field for 21 snaps. What good is that doing him?
Yeah.
Like, maybe he's improving in practice, but he still needs to reps.
So this is just my view on this. I have no inside knowledge, not saying I know anything about this, but I think that's a lot of, we're seeing these players take the step that's right in front of them instead of looking 10 steps down the road. Because I'm with you. If I'm Jerion Dickey, or if I'm one of these athletic freaks, but maybe not quite as polished at the wide receiver position, I'm not taking what I assume. Again, I don't think there's been anything confirmed with Dickey, but I know there were all the reports that he was getting a pretty good NIL deal to go to Oregon. I'm not taking the early payday for possible future whatever. Like, if you go to a school where you're going to get on the field and develop, yeah, especially nowadays with the way the transfer portal is, if you go out there and just 1 year of production as a true freshman, teams like Alabama, Georgia are going to come calling, then go take your NIL money and go improve it with the big boys, especially if you're not. Now, if we're talking, I'm just going to use him because he was the number one player overall in the class. If we're talking Jeremiah Smith type players who are refined route runners, or even Brandon Ennis last year, like, I can't fault that guy for going to Ohio State because he was such a good route runner to begin with. Like, there was not much he needed to improve on.
Ohio State's such a unique situation with how they produce NFL players, right? Yeah. What? I guess it depends on the amount of money you're getting, right? Like, I have no idea what Jerion Dickey's NIL deal is, but
yeah,
it's probably substantially more than he would get from tier 2 Big Ten school, for example. Like, if he went to Minnesota or Nebraska or something like that, he'd probably get on the field, but he's probably not making as much money as he's making at the Phil Knight Academy for what, I don't remember what Zoolander is, but that's what I feel like Oregon is. But yeah, it's just an interesting discussion. I was actually having a conversation with somebody who knows a lot more about this than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's interesting when a very highly regarded player that doesn't do a lot in year 1 is around for year 2. That tells you the staff believes in him.
Yeah.
So I wonder about that with Jerion Dickey. And that's very similar to the Hakeem Williams situation at Florida State. Just food for thought.
I mean, is it the staff believes in him, or is it the staff doesn't want to lose any players out of that room, so they say they believe in him? Because, I mean,
Generally speaking, double down and say, hey, like, we want to continue this commitment financially to you.
yeah, I mean,
And
I
so,
think Phil Knight doesn't care. He's going to keep writing the checks. So, like, I don't know that it hurts him any, but
but they
where
have
do
to
you see?
allocate a certain amount of money. Money isn't endless, even with Phil Knight money. Like,
True.
so they're making the conscious decision to keep him around, probably at a higher rate than they could get somebody who'd maybe be just as effective in the portal. And I have a couple theories on this, but this is a really a discussion for probably another time.
It is an interesting discussion because when you say that, it also makes me think, okay, well, they're also talking about a guy like Austin Novosad, who I don't know that they truly, I mean, if they went and bring in Dante Moore, I don't know how much they believe in him. Now, I imagine he's not getting the NIL deal that Jerry on Dickey got, but it's one of those
No.
things where, like, I guess it has to be player specific because there's some players you definitely would be like, I don't know why you didn't leave. Like Austin Novosad's one. He'd be a player I would think would hit the transfer portal post spring, but I don't know.
His market probably isn't robust, and I'm sure his team is sending out
No, it's
feelers and
not.
saying, "Hey, like, what do you think of this guy?" And Oregon's like, "We'll just pay X amount of money to stick around as our QB3."
Yeah, I mean, should have stayed at Baylor. I'd have loved if he stayed. I think he'd be the starting quarterback right now. Even as much as I love Daquan Finn, I think he would be the starter there. Let's really quick touch on the running back position before we get out of here. You know, Jordan James, running back that Felix was very high on, looks like he's going to be the guy. You still have Noah Whittington and Jaden Lamar there. Do you lean Jordan James? I mean, he looked fairly good at times last year when he was able to get on the field and touch the ball behind Bucky Irving, led the team in attempts last year behind Bucky Irving with 107. He's a completely different back than Bucky Irving. I don't know that you can I don't think that you can project that kind of production. What did Bucky Irving have? Almost 1,200 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. Jordan James, a okay receiving back. Like, I think it's probably more of a split between him and I think Jaden Lamar actually is probably the more athletic over Noah Whittington. But how do you see this backfield shaking out? Are you intrigued by Jordan James at all from a CFF perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was super efficient last year, 7.1 yards per carry. And while I don't expect that to continue, I thought he looked good, really good at times. I actually was surprised when I saw he ran for like 760 yards and 11 touchdowns. I was like, huh.
Yeah.
But I remember he had a couple big spike weeks where he was like getting like 1 or 2 yard touchdowns right at the goal line when they were spelling Irving. But yeah, I think it's going to be James. They seem to really like Noah Whittington. They talked to him up a lot last year. I think he's going to be the RB2 again. He got hurt, and so we didn't get to see kind of what his impact would have been. But I'm guessing that James gets upwards of what Irving did last year. Probably not in the passing game too. Bucky Irving caught like a crap ton of passes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he got 56 passes. I don't think Jordan James catching 56 passes, but I do think James gets upwards of 200, 220 plus touches, and I think that's a pretty darn valuable position.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Whittington, maybe he's that guy. I still like Lamar. I think he is the better receiving back. He's also very, I forgot what he's listed as. At 5'11". I can't for the life of me remember what his size is, but 5'11". I think he's 180, maybe 190. I do think he is a very good pass catching back, very good burst. Like, I think he is kind of the opposite of Noah Whittington and Jordan James. So maybe he does get some run. I would not be surprised if he gets some receiving as well. Would be an interesting back end. I'm not counting on him for fantasy upside. I still think it's going to be, you're probably right on Jordan James being the guy.
Currently listed at 5'11", 200 pounds.
I do not remember him being that big, but
yeah, I thought he was on the smaller side too, but maybe I'm just
he's
listed 190 at recruitment, so he added 10 pounds, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up his because I want to say I know that I liked him. I'm trying to remember who some of his athletic comps were in our database because I want to say he had some interesting ones just as an athlete.
He's got a verified 4.55 from 2020. Yeah. So I mean, when he was what, 15?
Miles Sanders and Jason McClellan are probably the top two. So
2 players that got destroyed by ACL injuries.
yeah. And Miles Sanders was, decent at Penn State at times and had an okay NFL career, but yeah. So it'll be an interesting, battle between him and Noah Whittington is who the two will be, but we both agree Jordan James will be the guy there, and an interesting running back, at least for CFF purposes, this year. We'll see. I don't know that you'd count on the running back too for Oregon, because you also got to remember, like, Dylan Gabriel is likely going to steal some of those carries at some point with his rushing. And,
Bo Nix did too.
That's fair. That's true. Bo, I mean, big game Bo though. He's that offense was on the field a lot last year. I don't know that. I think we see Oregon take a small step back in offensive production. I don't think it's a massive one, but I don't know that they're as explosive and just outside of against Washington really scoring at will, because that was really the only team that seemed to be able to slow them down.
Yeah, offensively, they're running it back with better personnel overall, in my opinion, or as good.
Oregon 2024. I wanted to pull up their schedule really quick because I don't think they play anybody. They play Ohio State. But, I think that's probably their toughest game this year. So there's a realistic shot that they're winning the Big Ten. Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois, Michigan, Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington. That's like a one-loss.
That's an 11-1 team.
Yeah, it comes down to that Ohio State game, which is...
I think it's in Oregon.
It is. So, that could be a big, in Autzen, that could be a win for Oregon, man. I don't know. I have my reservations about Will Howard and what Ohio State is going to do this year. So,
you think Oregon's favored in that game? Because I do.
I think they give them 2. I don't think they even give them a full field goal. But yeah, I think Oregon will be, especially if both. I can't imagine either one of them is going in with a loss at that point, especially not Oregon. Oh, what is Ohio State's schedule? Let me see here. Ohio State's going in. No, I don't. But because here you'll figure out why. Akron, Western Michigan, then they get a bye week. Then Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa. Then they go to Oregon. That I bet you that game is probably game day's game as well. That's gonna
be an awesome game.
Yeah, so I can't. Oh God, we have so many good games next year. I cannot wait for the season to start. The kickoff week alone has some incredible games. See, I think that game right there. Well, it won't decide the Big Ten because I think those they'll probably play each other again for the Big Ten championship because
Ohio State's supposed to get through Michigan and Penn State too, regardless.
I think Penn State's the one who challenges both. Well, again, Oregon doesn't have to play Penn State. I don't think Michigan challenges Oregon, and I think with all the turnover, I realistically think Ohio State should beat them this year. We'll see what happens. But
yeah, we'll see.
So I think we could see them play each other again in the Big Ten championship. But I would argue, dollars for donuts or however that saying goes, they're right. I think they're on equal setting with Ohio State as the best team in the Big Ten. I don't think Ohio State is that much of an advantage over them. Maybe because of some of the players they brought in through the transfer portal. But overall, I think the teams are fairly comparable. And I think it's not unfair to say right now, as crazy as to say, you might believe more in Will Stein and his offense than Ryan Day and his. So Chip Kelly's offense now. My bad. Chip Kelly's offense at Ohio State.
Ohio State, 10.5 wins, juice minus 150. Oregon wins 10.5, juice to the under minus 122.
Wow.
So that's telling us that Ohio State will beat Oregon.
Man, I don't know.
150 is pretty pricey for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Certainly have those 3 teams we named on the schedule.
It's gonna be a fun season, man. I can't wait. All these people talking negatively about realignment. Now we get Ohio State, Oregon, baby, in week whatever that was, 5 or 6. It's gonna be fun, and it's a conference game, not an.
It's a conference game.
Conference game, baby. Ohio State and Oregon. All right, that's gonna do it for Chris Moxley and myself. Kirk left when he saw us disagree, saying that Let me read what his message was. How dare you say Will Stein's offense is better than Ryan Day's and Kirby's? Look, Chip Kelly, I'm sorry. He's gone, so Kirk's not hearing this. I'm sorry, Kirk. Sorry, I know it's an Ohio State, fan and everything. I should have defended Ohio State better, but, speaking facts up here. So Kirk's upset. Maybe he'll be back next week. Felix might actually let him on the shows. He's probably going to be very disgusted with the way I mispronounced names today and just handled this show completely unprofessionally, but that's all right. That's what you get when Felix doesn't show up. That's Chris. Other way. That's Chris Moxley. I'm Matt Bruening. We will catch you guys again next week.